I'm the autobiography of this book, The Testimony of a Drug Lord Reborn. It's pretty much self-explanatory. And I created bread manna, which Christ and Moses used. It's an authentic drug made from a plant called mayhem. It's a truth serum. It's the most powerful enlightenment drug in the world. And it recreates the sacred secretion that we conduct with. That's why Christ and Moses used this bread manna from a plant called mayhem. And I'll bring a lot of information about this. This book here, right, I can guarantee you, it's one of the most powerful books on earth, and I'm not trying to sell you the book. Not at all, right? But I want you to know something very powerful. There's a reason why I'm here. I was naturally selected and chosen, right, with what I've gone through my own life. And that's why I'm going to tell you a little story about being a father and being a godfather in the underground world, on the streets. Okay, so I'm going to start here with some basic common sense of being down to earth and creating a reputation by word of mouth, because I always have. And so I'm going to tell you the honest truth, right, how I went through life. So my real father left me before I was one, because I was born. He started cheating with all my mother's friends, and my mother copped it sweet because she loved them that much, but it was because of me. And it was because I was born. He just didn't care. Now, I remember meeting him once when I was about 6, 7 years old. It's the only time I ever met him, once only. And he just stopped in to say goodbye and give me a present and took off again. He was there for about 5 minutes, if that. My mum said to me, "That's your father, right?" And I didn't really know how to take it, because these are the facts. My mother's next boyfriend, he put me in the hospital with microsurgery at 16 months old for 16 hours. 4 months later, he drowned in my bathtub. And I've made a lot of bits about this, but these are just facts. I was clinically dead and revived in the hospital. Died for quite a while, apparently. And then my mother, she married an atheist who said I was worthless, never man up to anything. And that was the relationship I had. I was the black sheep of the family. And it had a profound effect in the end, but my father and myself, I became his favourite son, when in fact, my brothers were. And you wouldn't believe this in a million years, but it had the most unbelievable ending when my father passed away from cancer at 98. And he thought I was his best son and asked me and made me promise to look after mum. And a lot of information comes through this, but I want to tell you something about my childhood that's very important. So reality is, my father left me before I was one. I first met him when I was about 6, 7 years old. And my mum told me that Eric, my stepfather, like, just think about this. I'm drowned in bathtub at 2 years old, right, at 20 months old, okay, 4 months after being 16 months old, after the microsurgery for 16 hours. So what happened here was that my mother's boyfriend was very jealous and spiteful, and that caused the adverse effect with me. And what happened was my mum, she got engaged to my stepfather while she was still engaged to Kurt. And Kurt found out and then kidnapped me and drowned me in the bathtub out of jealous and spite. And I know that's hard to cop, but this is what I got told happened, right? And in fact, my stepfather, Eric, was with my mum coming running into his apartment when I was kidnapped and found me in the bathtub upside down. And mum said I was like purple and turning green, and there's no life in me at all. She was screaming her lungs out, but Eric picked me up, my stepfather, and rushed me to the hospital where they revived me. And if it wasn't for Eric's thinking at the time, I would not have been revived. They said I was lucky, very lucky, they just got me in a nick of time. That's what my mum said. And it's thanks to Eric, right, when she was hysteric. She was hysteric. When she picked me up from the bathtub, put me in the carpet, there was no life in me and I was turning purple. She was totally hysteric. And Eric picked me up and rushed me to the hospital like lightning. And thanks to him, I was revived. And, you know, I didn't really know this because my mum never told me. She suppressed it from me. At 5 years old, so I remember the worst moment in her life in 1945, World War II, 15 years before I was born, and she shit herself. I said, "Mum, where were we? What happened?" She said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Mum, I'm sitting yarns. We're sitting in the cellar looking at a little window with bombs outside. Mum, and we're both shit scared." And Mum freaked out because there's a moment happened to her and not me. It never happened to me. And I didn't know. She freaked out. So she didn't tell me. She said, I was having a dream. But I could feel the truth. And I knew something was wrong. And I made a lot of videos about this. So she thought it was a freak of nature, and that's the way I was being treated. Right? And my father said I was worthless because I was a freak of nature. And I've made a lot of videos about that. But nevertheless, I go to school, get picked on all the time, red hair and freckles, and made a lot of videos about this, right? I ended up leaving school at 12 years old. I'm rejected at home, black sheep of the family. But there was no evil being carried out, right? My dad looked after me well, and my mum, they really did. But it hurt me that my father always said I was worthless and never amounted to anything, and they thought I was a freak, right? And I was a black sheep, right? And they had 3 other kids. And my next brother, his first son, was born on his birthday. It was his favourite son. And he was an atheist, and they all became full-on atheists as well. My mum said she believed in Christ. My mum showed me a movie when I was about 6 years old, and I sat down and watched a black and white movie about Christ, and there's things I'll never forget, right? Ever since I was a child. And you know what? I've never been religious, never went to church, and none of these things, but it's just some things sat with me for a reason. And this movie at 6 years old sat with me, right? Because I couldn't understand how a person could do things that he done like this, right? A guy on the street, a street warrior, right, that's going against the whole system and all these religions, but he shows them. And he smashes a gamble tables, market tables, and bashes 12 people in the church, right? Okay, 12 people in the church, he tells the kings, pastors, and priests that you do not know what you do, you're all crazy, you're all trapped in your mind, and Baal controls you in here, and you do not know what you do. And when you see the things that he does and all the miracles he performs, I couldn't understand why a person so unbelievable with such miracles, so much hate could be given to such a person where everybody threw stones at him in the streets. Everybody. Only 11 people had faith in his mum. That was it. 12 people and his mum and Mary, that was it. They were the only ones. The rest threw stones at him, right? He's sitting in the square getting whipped the living shit out of, stones thrown at him, and he says, Father, forgive them, they do not know what they do. And he's being wailed, man. He's being whipped to the shit house, thorns around his head, and then he's made to carry the cross all the way through the streets. He's struggling like fuck. And no one's helping him. They're just throwing stones at him and spitting on him all the way through the streets, man. And as a child, it's incomprehensible. It's like, really? How could people be so evil to treat a person like that? A person who's done these things that's so unbelievable. No wonder he said what he said. You could see it with the pastors and preachers, how they set him up, right, to go on the cross because they were controlling. They were control freaks. They were all control freaks. Okay, they were all living the same narrative, just like they are today. And you get it, you know, you sort of get it, like as a fatherly person who's suffering yourself from going through the adverse effects of what our fathers do and how we get treated in this world today, right? And when I went through the adverse effect of the way I was treated by my fathers and what happened to me, being rejected to the shit house and all the complications I went through, like I never got any fatherly love. That's the whole point. I never got any, man. Where am I supposed to get it from? Where? And, you know, when I wagged school for 6 months, got busted and never went back to school, that 6 months I sat in the bush and an orbital light came to me, an elderly. And no one believes in it. They think you're crazy, right? That's okay. It's all right. But, you know, like I had a 10-foot tall giant come to me for an orbital light and stepped out of a portal, just boomfa, right? One of the Australian Aboriginals I made a lot of videos about, especially the last one. I made a very powerful video last night and this morning. I put them both in this timeline with the 10 most powerful videos on earth that no one else is teaching it or telling you about. I hope you'll take the time to watch these because believe me, it'll change your life. When you understand what we do here with the testimonies from my followers and breaking people completely free, the rebirth, the crossover, the great resurrection of humanity, trust me, we teach with the most powerful tools on earth. You see that with your own two eyes and listen to my followers. Listen to their testimonies. I'll tell you something. As a father, as a real father in this world, and I'm saying that because it's how it is. I learned the hard way. I didn't have a real father, right? I learned the very hardest way you possibly could. I took drugs. I was a junkie. I watched half my mates die on heroin, 3 died mums. I flatlined at 18 years old from a drug overdose. Walked around like a zombie for a week. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. Honestly, I was that lost. Okay, I took drugs to numb myself because I couldn't cope. From stress, anxiety, fear, and the whole lot. And that's reality. In fear, in stress, in anxiety, being rejected, couldn't fit in anywhere. Okay? And only with certain people in the streets going through the same shit I was. The only ones that was going through the same shit I was, or could relate to it. Those became my best friends, all right? Because we related to the same things one way or the other, right? Our parents grabbing and bashing us, going in and out of homes, being rejected one way or the other, no matter what it is, being rejected, ending up in the streets, right? Ending up in the streets like this, where you do things totally different than the rest of the world. Because you don't have an option, right? You don't have a choice. And it's not because you wanted to. It's not because you chose that path. It's because that's where your life led you, right? And not everybody's blessed, okay? Some people do it tough. And I went for a tough time and I suffered the consequences. Took drugs and became a junkie, flatlined at 18 years old. I mean, seriously. Watching half your mates die on heroin, 3 die in your arms, it wasn't a lot of fun, but it gave me abilities I never dreamed of. I went through a lot of adverse effects. I got hit by a drunk driver at 100 miles an hour, 3 months before I turned 21. On July the 10th, 1981, got hit really hard. I was a bad junkie, I couldn't get off drugs. I went to the doctors because I was on methadone, a free program. Everybody else was on heroin, and I had a terrible habit. I went from 74 kilos to 51. My body organs were shutting down. They couldn't help me. I was scared, man. I felt I was dying after the drug overdose. So I was trying to do everything I could get off drugs and I couldn't. From 18 years old, I couldn't get off. And man, I got scared. Then I got hit by a drunk driver, right? Okay, and boom. I can't explain this any other way than the way I'm going to explain it to you. Okay? I was a junkie every day and never was home, right? Because I was junkie. I didn't want to be at home. So I was never home, right? Once a week. I just pop in and out. My mum and dad knew. And you don't want to be home with your parents and your family, right? When you're a bad junkie, you just don't. So you couch surf, right, with your friends. And sleep anywhere or sleep in the car. But man, I was on drugs so much. I was awake 22 hours a day and I was nodding off 2 or 3 hours, man. I had total insomnia, right? I was on so much methadone, I used to nod off about 2-3 hours a night, and it's like you're on meth all the time, the same fucking side effects, right? You're going all the time, man, all the time. And you're awake majority of the time, and you're just on a nod for 2 hours or 3 hours. You're not even asleep, you're just like in dream time, and you're living awake all the time, right? And man, it has a profound effect on your reality, but it's a drug and it's killing you massively, right? But you're living in dream time all the time. You're living through the sixth sense. You're living in dimensional fields all the time. When I died and took a drug overdose, I walked around like a zombie for a week, right? And there's no other way to explain this. I walked around like a zombie for a week, right? And I was shit scared up to that moment of everybody. Got picked on all the time. Scared. I had an adverse effect of dying and walking around like a zombie for a week. It made me not scared of people anymore. I was more scared of myself from that moment onwards, and the decisions I was making by the drugs and trying to get off the drugs. I knew my problem was me, with drugs, killing myself. And I tried to do everything I could to get off it. And I wasn't scared of anyone else anymore, right? And it had a side effect where I grew more guts and more balls just by not worrying about it. Just by not being in fear and always being picked on, because people pick on a weak mark. They always do. Everybody does. Once you start to release fear itself, man, it has a side effect, right? That's beyond the mind, really. And I lost that fear from being in the death experience. And what I feared was myself from that moment onwards, and my drugs, and trying to get off the drugs. And I couldn't get off the drugs, but I tried my hard. Then the accident happened. I got hit by a drunk driver at 102 miles an hour. The speedo got jammed. It was horrific. Absolutely horrific accident. I do mean horrific. Couldn't be any worse. The other 2 people in the car was mangled. They lived, but they were fucking mangled. I didn't get a scratch or bruise. That's the astonishing part. It was a full-on miracle. They knew that at the scene, right? Okay, they checked me at the scene and let me go home from there because that's what they did in 1981. I went home and sat in my bedroom. I was never home. I sat in there for 3.5 fucking weeks. And we were living in a caravan with this permanent annex, right? And my mum painted all black with stars and moons and that sort of shit. And she knew I had a bad drug habit, right? And I sat in the bedroom and I said, Mum, I'm just going to get off drugs. I'm finished. I'm done. After this accident, I'm done, Mum. I'm going to sit in there and wean it out, no matter what it takes. So my mum supported me, right? And that's what they thought. But the truth was, I was fucking high as a kite. I never been so high in my life, a natural high, okay? And it was a shock. I went into shock, right? Complete shock, man. And I just kept telling my mum, oh, Mum, I'm just trying to get off drugs, man. And I sat in that bedroom staring into space, right? Looking at the ceiling, right? With moons and stars and that Mum painted. I'm just lying there staring into space, man, for 3.5 fucking weeks. Never took drugs ever again. Never had any problems, man. Never had any side effects on a putrid habit. That's impossible, right? But I had no fucking side effects whatsoever. None. Got off drugs in 3.5 weeks, never had a side effect. I'm in the zone, man. I'm in the zone somewhere else, and I can't explain it any other way. I'm just in the zone somewhere. From that moment onwards, I couldn't hold a job down. I got married and had 2 kids, okay? And couldn't hold a job down, right? Could not hold a job down. And I was suffering panic and anxiety attacks, okay? Panic and anxiety attacks, all right? Manic depressant, right? But not really. It was just panic and anxiety attacks. That's what it was. And I used to have 3 or 4 panic attacks every week, right, for the next couple of years. But I had to provide for my family. And I loved XYs and GTs and the XY model cars. They're a collectible item, the most collectible in Australia. And I started to buy and sell cars from home because I couldn't hold the job down. And I followed my passion. And then I met people, both in the underground world, cops and politicians, because I love the cars at status. I met people from all walks of life, right? With swap meets, drag racing, GTs and car shows. And I became one of the biggest suppliers for parts and original cars, running one-outs all over the country and buying cars all over the country, 1 and 2, 3 owners. Always lived by honesty is the best policy, creating a reputation by word of mouth, and spread like a virus all the way across the country. I became the most famous with XYs, right? From backyard selling, from selling from home, right? Not a big business, just a single person working from my own backyard, running ads in the papers, right? Starting to buy all the dealers out that went into franchising, starting to bring parts back from South Africa, from Thailand, and buying massive dealers out, and companies shutting down with obsoleted parts for Fords. And I went right into a pot program with Ford Company that bought all the parts back from 550 yards that were shut down when they franchised. And we brought all the parts back and sold them to all the Ford dealers. Small Fords, Galaxies, some more Mustang stuff, Falcons, different models, right? Different models, and we auctioned it off to the people like Rare Spare Shops. And Linda Robin Barth, who owns GT Mustang Auto Parts in Brisbane, Bob Maddock, Bob Williamson, David Frake, they own the biggest GT shops across Australia, in Sydney and Melbourne. They all know me very personally, and the people that build XY GTs and HOs, the top builders like Terry Ullman, and of course David Bowden, who owns the museum in Nambour. They all know me because he owned me the green GDHO that we rebuilt that was perfect and won the top trophies, and he owned the car. And he knows it comes from me. He knows I built the car. And when I came here 5 years ago, I went on the XY page and got #1 in all the posts for that reason. This book here, a lot of people bought this book straight away, and it was on the Martin Bryan back groups when I talk about being on the front page of paper with the guns that disarm Australia that taxpayers paid for, and we're on the front page 5 years later on the end of down in 2001. That caused some massive attention. And you can see in the underground world where I was, #1 in the Star Chamber inquiry, in the biggest gatekeeper report with godlike power in the underground world. And that's astonishing, right? Really, really astonishing when you understand that we take down the highest death home healthcare, Caroline violence, domestic violence in 30 years and bring it to the lowest level in 30 years with domestic violence, where kids getting taken up, their parents going home to get raped and bashed, and then becomes prisoners and prostitutes later. The courts, the Royal Commission paying out for 23 years, and the Stoneback Declaration of Poverty paying out today for $250 billion. The biggest malhealth research ever conducted in global history, and DNA studies done. That leads to Book Freedom by Jim McGill and 16,000 top scholars and Nobel Prize winners on the same page, the Book of Life, the Holy Grail of Life, the Book Freedom by Jim McGill of the human condition that we all suffer from. Okay, and that's powerful with When I'm Breathing, who's won a Nobel Prize with a credential with the Holy Breath of Life. And this changed our ability to do every single thing that Christ can and more in our DNA. And that's profounding, right? Because I can do what Christ can and more. And we all got the same genetic process with exactly the same genetic abilities. So if I'm telling you now, I can do what Christ can and more, I'm the son of Christ, son of Savior, son of Abraham, it's a genetic memory. It's an ancestry tool. And if you choose to make the right decision with the right tools, you have exactly the same genetic process and genetic memory to do everything I can and more. And that's astonishing, right? And what more gift could you ever be given on earth? With the most powerful divine intervention and most powerful divine power to command nature and have things to do with what Christ can do and more in that bloodline, in that DNA, the book of life. Wow, right? Wow. So just think about that for a moment, okay? And don't be judgmental and competitive, because your mind's your worst enemy that prevents you from doing this. And that's what you got to learn about yourself, that you're trapped in a mentality, in a personality, and not spirituality. And spirituality is what brings you out of this. The sixth sense, to think outside the mind, with the picture of 1,000 words that cannot lie to you. And that's where freedom is. The liberation's beyond the mind. So far beyond the mind, you have no idea what you're doing with the mind. I can guarantee you that. Okay? And as a godfather in this world, Squeezy Magazines, I've told you, please listen to my 10 videos here. 1 to 10, completion of the Bible. Okay, completion 1 to 10, book of Numbers. It's very critical that you listen and pay attention and take the time. Because believe me, I come with information that no one else is delivering here, with the great resurrection of humanity. Okay, I want you to listen to me what I'm saying to you. Listen to what I'm saying very carefully. With the great resurrection of humanity. Okay, I'm the one with the resurrection that protects the elect, with the most powerful confirmation on earth, believe it or not. Listen, I'm not in control of my vessel. Okay, and you're not in control of yours neither. Okay, you live in a personality mentality, and waking up from amnesia and the reincarnation trap has a profound effect on your reality. When you realize who you are, why you're here, and what the true meaning of life is with the correct tools. When you live in your primordial state, you control your business from the outside in instead of the inside out. You're in your spirituality, not in your mentality, in a personality. Because that's what the adverse effect is here. Breaking free from this, breaking free from the mind into your spirituality to use 100% of your brain and controlling your business from the outside in instead of the inside out. And has a profound effect beyond the mind. So far beyond the mind, you don't know what you're missing. But Christ was right, and I learned that the hard way. Right? I learned that the hard way. Crossing over is a beautiful thing. It's so powerful and so beautiful, you have no idea what you're missing out on. Not if you're not in the right, in tune to the codependent power with the EMP pulse. If it's out of whack, you don't know what you're doing. To be innocent and to be selfless means every single thing to you with the quantum mechanic of a relationship with in tune to the codependent power. It's a codependent relationship. It's a two-way street. And when you don't get that right, you don't know what you're doing, because you're living in a one-way street. And that one-way street's taking you to the sixth mass extinction strip, and the sixth sense of the sixth time, living in yourself, living in your mind. That's got no idea what it's doing. Without that codependent relationship, you're nothing. You don't know what you're doing. You need to let your primordial being control your vessel. That's the Holy Spirit, divine light that controls you. That's 27 biofields to think outside the mind, right? That gives you the power to command nature, right? So don't get it mixed up, right? I'm the greatest godfather in the world for that reason alone, okay? And I put my mark on earth like no one else in the world ever has. My evidence and my history speaks for itself. I've left my mark on earth like no other godfather or father in this world ever has. And it's through my own suffering that took me here, with this kind of adverse effect, where I create a reputation by word of mouth, by being down to earth and honest the best policy, okay, and suffering the consequences through that path myself, okay, to know that I never had a father, and then failing myself. That's right. It goes deeper than this, right? Okay, I become the biggest godfather in the underground world, and people had more faith in me that brought down the highest debt time in Hector Candle and Rise and Mismonths for 30 years. My resting up that commends me, so does others, that causes all these battles and effects. But that's irrelevant when the fact is, at exactly the same time, I failed my own children. Think about that for a moment. I've got 5 kids myself, and I failed them at the same time, right? And that's very uncomfortable to deal with, but you have your own guilt to deal with. And why did I fail them? Because I was saving everybody else. Too busy saving everybody else. Too busy saving everybody else around the whole world that I could. Maybe it had the biggest side effect, and you know, you had to sacrifice your own children to do that. And they're pear-shaped to the shithouse. They're not like you. And it scares the living shit out of you when you know you failed your own kids, right, as a father. And having that burden on your shoulder never makes you forget what you failed yourself, right? To live in that guilt factor and to face that head on is to repent and go right back to your childhood and understand why you failed yourself, right? To go right back to your own childhood and ask yourself why you failed yourself as a father to your own children. To your own children. You might have had a beautiful side effect with everybody else in the underground world and called the biggest statistics and the most powerful results as well, but you fail your own children at the same time because you left them. You go to jail for 10 years, okay? You get unlawfully deported, and you know how much it hurts them? When they love their father, do you know how much it hurts them? I don't think you do. But it destroyed them. And it's not because of a bad father, it's because what I was doing and going to jail for 10 years and then getting unlawfully deported and sitting the other side of the world, and it destroyed them. It fucking destroyed them completely, right? And it's the hardest thing to face. When I was sitting in detention center in 2016, right, okay, my two sons from my first marriage, she was an atheist, right? Pure atheist, the whole family was. One turned out to be gay, and Craig's got no fucking idea at all. He's 42 years old, right? All he cares about material. I can't even not have an intellectual conversation with him. I can't talk about love, care, loyalty, honor, respect, morals. I can't have one decent conversation with him as a father and a son. Not one. He don't want to hear it. He just wants to talk like a robot with a personality about material things, cars, gets boats, this, that, or whatever, right? And he drinks. Every Friday he drinks. Gets maggot drunk. He has got no spirituality at all. No love in him. He's disconnected from every other family member. He only goes to see his mum as a dead atheist. He doesn't have connection with his own brother. My second wife, Kirsty, right, who died in hospital in 92, brought back to life 3 times with the most powerful poem written in 2003, the one and only, 8 months #1 worldwide. She left me, right? Okay, we were separated. We had 3 children. She had a son. The son she had was Chris. He was 6 months old when I met her. And he had really bad ADHD because of his father, right? Now, Kirsty was like me, right? She wasn't an atheist. And she went through hell and got raped by her own father. That's why she committed suicide. Because she was raped by her dad. So she was very different and lived a lot of suffering. Her sister was raped, she was raped, and she lived on the streets a little bit. And she got connected with the oldest civilization out there that took her underwind quite often when she had to run away from home. And she went to the Aboriginals and sat with them. She could be lost for a day or two. Quite often, she'd sit there with them. Parents wouldn't even look for her because they knew. And they just let her go walk about when she was 12, 13 years old. They let her go walk about. Even if she's gone for a day or two, they didn't worry about her. That's what she told me. They never called the cops once. So she could disappear for a couple of days, they wouldn't care. She used to go to her brother's place, and I've talked about how she tried to commit suicide out there. She'd go out there for a day or two. They wouldn't even care, they wouldn't even know. And she was only young. Okay, so they had no care factor for her at all. But her father was raping her. And so she had a pretty bad upbringing that way too, right? And she was open-minded to things, right? When she died, she came back to life 4 times, man. First with no cane and then 3 times with the miracles. She wrote the most powerful poem in 2003, but guess what? Our 3 kids, Christine, Brandon, and Keenan, those 3 kids that we have, right? They have no mental disorders, right? They have none of these problems, right? And they're really spiritual kids, really spiritual, right? And when I come out of jail after 10 years, right, we got our connection again, right? And when I went to detention center, right, okay, I had Brandon and Christine on the phone every fucking day, man. Every single day. And they'd been forced to move in Orange because of her next child she had with a guy named Jeff Jardine, and that child has autism. So there's a defect in all of them except for our 3, right? That's what I'm trying to tell you. that's really profounding. And he's the one that wrote the document, right, an affidavit, subject to perjury, that he was the one that witnessed, right, the cops trying to get me to set me up, get her to set me up for the murder that her brother committed when he stabbed his wife 27 times down in Ashley in Alice Springs, right? And he was the one that wrote the affidavit because he wanted her to stay there in Orange because it was his child when they broke up. That's what it's all about. So he made a deal. He brought me the affidavit to stop deportation if I didn't intervene with this family court case, which had nothing to do with me anyway. So I got the affidavit, and I'd never met the guy, but he was there and witnessed the cops trying to get my wife to set me up for murder when her own brother stabbed his wife out in Alice Springs, found pure and guilty, and especially through an appeal. He appealed, and you can read it on Google. Darren Ashley Alice Springs trying to set me up for the murder. You can read it yourself. He blamed his brother-in-law, drug lord, right? Read it yourself, man. Go to the affidavits, and to the appeal, you see it's my name all over the documents. And it failed because he was guilty to the shithouse. He done it himself, out of jealousy and spite. He stabbed her 27 times. Had nothing to do with me. I wasn't even there. But they were trying to set me for the murder, and they knew that. That's the astonishing part. She wrote the most powerful poem in 2003, right? And, I rejected it. I took no fucking real note of it. But, when they studied this and they questioned her about this, and they said that after interviewing her, she said it was me that brought her back to life. You don't believe that kind of crap. It's a miracle that's so powerful, right? With 7 peer reports on CCTV, the most powerful miracle they've ever seen anywhere in the world, where she lifts her body up 8 inches of the bed from one end to the other, right? Like a divine intervention takes place with power, and boom, when she flatlines, her monitor comes back on and they pump her stomachs, trying to save her life, giving her 0% chance of living. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, and she lives to tell that poem. That's so powerful when they interviewed her about this. And I just think it's astonishing when you realize the God-given gift that you're given, okay, and how divine instruments work in your favor sometimes, and you're not even aware of it, because I certainly wasn't. Not like this. This is powerful. And you can't wrap your mind around this stuff. But, when you listen to all the things that's happened to me with miracles and divine intervention and divine power, recorded by the biggest think tank and DNA studies done, it's beyond the mind, really. And I can understand that. It's hard to fathom. But it's also the truth that's going to set us free. We can all do what Christ can because I can, and I'm living solid evidence. I can do every single thing Christ can and more in the biggest study ever done. And there's nothing to be afraid of here. Why would you want to reject it? If I can teach you how to go through a process of waking up from amnesia and crossing over and going through a genetic process, genetic memory, where you start to activate your primordial skills in your primordial state, in your ancestor memories, in your own DNA, the book of life. Why would you run away from that? To never suffer the consequences ever again, and to be free from the human condition and everything we suffer. No more fear, no more stress, no more anxiety, in a time where time stands still and life preserves for 1,000 years to create heaven and earth. It's a fact of life. That's what we're here to do. Being in the Christ image is crossing over, that we're all in the Christ image, and going through the process and dedicating with the book Freedom by Jim McGinnis and with the breathing program, the Holy Grail of Life and the Holy Book of Life. And that's what the most powerful effect is, right? In a 40-day hunger fast, right, where you don't eat and listen to exactly what I say and exactly what I preach, and people go through this, look at their testimonies, and they're discovering the truth with a massive wow factor. And it's not what you think. It's powerful. But it's also releasing everything that controls you, right? And making you suffer from. And it's magnificent. So hard to explain. It's so far beyond the mind. You've got to go through it yourself. You've got to feel it, man. And that's the only way you're going to get through this, to stop thinking and feel it yourself. And there's only one way to do this. And that's a crossover that we give here. And if you don't do it, you'll never know. If you don't do it, you'll never know. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, or what you think. If you don't do this, you'll never know. You'll never know. Trust me. You'll never know unless you go through this. Crossing over is the most powerful and peace mind you'll ever feel in your life, with the most powerful confirmation that you cannot get wrong. Impossible to get wrong. What you go through here is so powerful, nobody in the world, right, can ever deceive you again, and you can never be confused about nothing ever again, no matter who they are, no matter where they come from, no matter what they believe in, because it has so much powerful, that much of a powerful and peace born on you, on yourself. So you can never be deceived again. and you're free from everything you suffer from, right? For the first time in history, you find liberation and go through a process of a transformation that's beyond the mind. So far beyond the mind, you need to have faith, because believe me, it'll come out of the blue, right? And it's a wow factor, and it's a knowing that you've never had before in your life. It's a knowing you've never had before in your life. Trust me, I know. And it's magnificent. It's so far beyond the mind that Christ knows exactly what he's talking about, and you learn that the hard way. I did. And wow, it's so far beyond the mind, you can't express it in real life. You can't understand it in the mind. The mind's got no comprehension of understanding this at all. You must go through the experience yourself. You've got to go through this yourself. Your mind is the oppressor. It limits you beyond anything you've ever understood. Your reality is 10 times more powerful than the reality you're living in without you realizing it. You don't even know. You don't even know. That's why you don't know. 10 times more clarification, 10 times more power, 10 times more love pouring all over you. And oh boy, it's high, the highest feeling you've ever had in your life. Nothing in this world can compare with it, not even remotely close. And people think you're crazy or you're on drugs or dreaming. Mate, it's real, right? It's real. The mind prevents you from this. Believe it or not, the voice in mind's ultimately sign of extinction and prevents you from everything. Okay, excuse me a minute, guys. Oh, man. Sorry, guys. Listen, just hang on a sec. Hang on a sec, guys. I've got to switch this stupid clock off, man. Oh, man, where am I? Okay, sorry about that, guys. There's an alarm clock just went off. I had to switch it off so it wouldn't disturb us again. Look, at the end of the day is, right, I created the most positive atmosphere in the southeast corner of Queensland with squishy magazines for 2 years, okay, from everybody. No matter who they are, where they come from, but I went through my path in such a way that I created more positive atmosphere, more friends, and more relationships than anyone else, okay? And these are the side effects that took down the highest death rate in King and Boston in 30 years. And my arresting officer commends me and so did other cops, and caused a massive side effect, right, with the book Freedom by Jimmy Givers that leads to the cure of human conditioning that's going to save humanity. And that's all that matters. It's the only thing that matters. It's the only thing that should matter. When you have this side effect and you cause so many people to cope in life, and you cure the human condition to so many people and bring them back in the primal state, in the biggest testing centre, right, testing study ever done, in every adverse effect in Australia, every testing centre, I brought the most powerful truth serum out that everyone took. That caused a massive powerful side effect. Most powerful truth serum, most powerful enlightenment drug, most powerful love drug. And that's what you got to focus on, the most powerful love drug. And we created ourselves. And we can't anymore. That's the whole point. The sacred secretion is a powerful love drug, a meth effect, alert, alive, awake and aware. And wow, like the movie Limitless, right? Using 100% of your brain, and wow, a clarification coming right out of your mind, right out of your psychedelic effect. And holy crap, that's the sacred secretion. When you conduct with that, your Neuralink, your tree of life, Jacob's ladder, right, in your body cells on fire, your gut feeling survival mode is a self-preservation mode for life that activates. Like, think about this, direction microphones, I could feel them in the courtroom and putting pen to paper with remote viewing and deja vu to predict the future, right? That's how powerful your gut feeling is, survival mode. You can feel the truth so powerful, and you can read it and go through a portal. The light bulb here, the picture that tells that voice are going to light you, opens up the portal with dimensional thinking, right in with remote viewing into the courtroom. When they got you on your mind, putting pen to paper in the courtroom and they're coming to get you, you can see it when you feel it with your gut feeling that powerful. Imagine how they felt about that, because it's on the documents by the biggest think tank in the Star Chamber Inquiry on the gate report that I have that ability, because they had direction microphones on me. At the time, I was in full surveillance with the most sophisticated equipment, and they heard what I said in the house to my family and friends, Okay, when they're in the courtroom putting pen to paper. They heard on direction microphones. They thought, holy shit. Okay, we have this ability. And, when people have telekinesis, mental telepathy, ESP, remote viewing, telekinesis, levitation, spin many clockwise, falling space, no deja vu, it's spirituality. It's a God-given gift that Christ had, and more. And I have those abilities in 7 peer reports, in 7 studies, right? 7 things that no one ever thought of. And wow, when you realize you're the only one that has these abilities, and the divine intervention, right, to command nature in your own DNA, right, in the book of life, you have something that no one else has, and it's a Father in you. And that's all that matters. The Father's in you, right? Christ is in you. The Father and the Son is inside you. And everybody has the same ability. In their own genetic process, in their own genetic memory, if you follow the right footsteps, and you do exactly what I say in Back to What I Preach, it'll come into you too. Exactly the same way it comes into me and many others. On a big study done, but I'm number 1 here. And that's all that matters. Who cares? Think about how the Father works through me and how He uses my vessel for a natural solution like this. Because it's beautiful. You couldn't be getting a greater gift in the world, could you? Seriously, think about it for a moment. Stop being judgmental and competitive and being so stupid in your mind and letting your mind sidetrack you, because every religion, pastor, priest does. And they have no comprehension of what they're doing. Same with New Age. They don't realize what they're doing in their mind. The voice of mind's ultimately showing things and it's only personality. Why on God's earth would you not want to know this when I come here to save humanity with a great resurrection and the rebirth, the crossover, and protect the elect with the most powerful confirmation on earth? In the biggest study ever done by 16,000 top scholars on the same page, on the same merge for the first time in human history, the Holy Breath of Life and the Holy Grail of Life. The book Freedom by Jim Higgins, and When I Breathe the Rogan to recreate the second secretion, and the Holy Breath of Life, the reactivation Neuralink, Jacob's Ladder, and the third eye, the sixth sense, to see the vision that tells you 1,000 words are going to lie to you. Like Christ said, think outside the mind, and you can do everything I can and more. And why on God's earth would you not want this? Because that's why I'm the biggest, powerful, most powerful Godfather and street warrior, like Christ was, and went through the same adverse effects, right? And a lot more powerful. And I'm not saying I'm him. I'm saying I know. And that's all that matters. And that's all that should matter, because you're told I'll be here, but you won't know who I am. You won't know my primordial being that controls the vessel. You won't know who I am. So why be so judgmental with personality and mentality when you have no spirituality? When you don't understand the same process? Because you should. And if you can't, then remember, you can only 7 to 15% of your brain because you're not in control of your brain. So who is? I'm a master of my own mind from the outside in, not the inside out. I can master my mind. And it's not what you think. It's a completely different adverse effect. It's a completely different way of thinking. It's outside the mind. It's controlling the vessel. It's controlling the mind. So yin and yang, good and evil, doesn't control you. To believe in your own truth, to come to your own conclusion by reasoning, right? To manifest your own truth and keep thinking that way in the consciousness and middle event and middle process and illusion, imagination. It's only mentality. It's not reality. It's only mentality. It's not reality. Reality is outside the mind. With the universal language you can see in the movie Limitless. Boomfa, a massive clarification, right? It's only a movie in metaphor, but a massive clarification with 7-fold wisdom and laws, a universal language. You can see it in the movie Limitless, right? That is a profound effect in your reality. A Matrix, the documentary of resurrection. He resurrects from his vessel. He's sitting on the other side through the light in the tunnel. His dimensional being, his primordial state, is in another dimension, right? Where everything is perfect. And then he controls his vessel from the outside in and resurrects his vessel. And that's the power that you have to resurrect and never suffer the consequence ever again. Think about that, because it's in the movie Matrix documentary, but again, it's only metaphor. Being for the light in the tunnel is 10 times more powerful, okay? As Plato describes in 15 books, 10 times, right, brighter sun, 10 times greener grass, 10 times more beautiful. When people die and cross over, they never want to come back because it's so beautiful. And all they feel is a quantum mechanic of a relationship and a universal power of love, unconditional love. And believe me, they come back and explain it with visions and dreams in their mind with illusion and imagination. But I'm telling you, they never want to come back, and they always feel the truth and they always feel the love. Right? When you go through this adverse effect, I'm going to take you right out of your cave, right at your vision and through the light at the end of the tunnel, and you'll see it and you'll feel it, like my followers have. And once you get a grip of it, you control your business from the outside in, and believe me, it has a profound effect in your belly that changes all the circumstances around you. That's why I'm the greatest father here that's going to bring you through this with real love, real compassion, and sacrifice everything in my life, even my own children, to be here for you and everyone else in the world. And you know, to fail my own children is to feel the Father's love that He loves each and every one of you as if you are the only one. And that's the feeling I have in my heart, right? From my own kids, from failing my own kids. I feel the failure of every father in this world, and I feel our failure as a father, as someone who's innocent and selfless, who will sacrifice every single thing, even his own kids. Even his own kids. Christ said you may have to use a two-edged sword and separate from your own families and friends, and it might be that powerful. And it is. But when I was sitting in the detention center, my kids was on the phone every day, right? When I got deported, mate, they turned on me and don't want to know me. I hurt them that much. I destroyed them, man. They don't even want to know me from that hurt. They don't even want to know. My first two sons couldn't care less. Haven't got any moral opinions at all. But these two kids, Brendan and Christine, they were so hurt. They blocked me, man. They've come back a couple of times, but they couldn't take it. They're on the phone with me every day until I got deported. And when I first got deported to Denmark, they're on the phone with me every day as well for the first couple of months. But then they couldn't take it anymore. They could not take it anymore. When I came back to Australia a few months later and I got deported again, that was the end. That was the last straw. They had hope again and got dashed again. I dashed them 3 times like this, and I have no control of it. But I never give up. I live with the most powerful infliction point in my life, failing my own kids, to feel the failure from the Father, how all his kids are failing. And they have to make the right decision, because if they don't, they won't make it. And it's their choice that becomes their own judgment. If they don't create the relationship, if they don't get back in the primal state and create the codependent relationship, they haven't got a hope in hell. They need to use natural selection and natural order. And I teach you with a natural selection and natural order, where you make that decision yourself and you find out in your own sovereignty, on your own 2 feet, and you feel it, right? You see it and you feel it beyond anything you've ever felt. The most powerful confirmation on earth, I promise you. Listen to my followers, listen to their testimonies, because they're going through this. Most of them never believed in the Bible, never believed in Christ, but they find out. They find out what the truth is. And now they all do, man. They know what the truth is. They bring the Father into their heart. They bring Christ inside them. And it fucking works. Believe me, it works more powerful than anything else in the world. And I never read the Bible. I never went to church. No, I never read the Bible, and I never went to church. And I learned the hard way and the most powerful way with the most powerful results. And that's all that matters, because that's how the Father works in each and every one of us, right? To create a reputation by word of mouth and not spreading, right, the wrong placebo effect and spreading information to make a name for yourself as an actor or anyone else, but the truth. And the truth will set everyone free. I can save the world if they listen to what I say and when they practice what I preach. It works for everybody. I guarantee it. Try it yourself and you'll know, and you'll feel the truth, and you'll get the most powerful confirmation that you've ever received in your life. And I promise you, you cannot fail with this. And once you go through this, you can never get deceived ever again. You can never be confused ever again, and you'll never suffer again. Never again. Never, ever, ever again. I promise you, these are the results.